Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled November 5th, 2024 City Council meeting. Will you bow your heads in prayer, please? Heavenly Father, Lord and Savior, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, we come to you today, Lord Jesus, thanking you for the blessing of the rain that we've had this week from such drought we've had the last 45 days. It's much needed. This is a big day for this country, Lord Jesus, and maybe this world. We ask that you, regardless of who wins our national election tonight, as far as president is concerned, we ask that you pull this country together to bless this country, to bless this state, and to bless this city. And for us to be reminded, Lord Jesus, that this is not our kingdom that we're just passing through. We ask that you look over, God, and bless us. We ask that you give us strength to make decisions tonight that are in the benefit of this city. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
If you'll stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, next we'll go to open forum. We have one, Ms. Cox.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Michelle Cox, and I'm the founder and president for life of the Parks Advocacy League. And so it's been a joy for 10 years to advocate for the parks and to see all that has been done, and we're grateful for all that the city councils up till now have also been doing to update parks. And I just want to express gratitude on behalf of the Parks Advocacy League that this is on the consent agenda, the playground for McCrimmon Park. We formed in order to build the splash pad in Maroney Park, which was completed in 2019, and we were not going to continue doing other projects. We didn't really have any plans until a family, or it's called 700 Family. It's a local group around that area of the southeast ward, had been trying to raise money for a new playground for McCrimmon. And they had kind of dissolved because of the pandemic, and so they gave us their little bit of money that they had fundraised, and they asked us to take it on and to see what we could do to put a new playground at this park. And so I'm thrilled to see that the people of Nacogdoches have voted in favor of the bond item for the park, for this playground. And so I just want to express my appreciation and my encouragement that as you review it today, the consent item, that it stay just a smooth, easy process, and we take that and get that playground built for these kids. It's a neighborhood park. There are many kids who live within walking distance. They need that park. It's going to bring them to the park, get them out of their houses, get the community together. It's going to be a beautiful thing. So I'm very excited about it, and I just would like to encourage that the process goes forward and that the kids can enjoy this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next item is consent agenda. Any items to be removed?
Mayor, I move that we accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go to the regular agenda. And the first 7 will all be public hearings. First item, 6A, consider approval of a specific use permit in a B2 general business and R4 multifamily zoning district for stone, sand, gravel, and mineral excavation for approximately 5 acres on Lot 1, City Block 47. Generally located on the east side of Old Tyler Road, approximately 1/2 mile north of the Power Street and Old Tyler Road intersection. This request has been submitted by James Wood on behalf of the owner, John Mast, of Separate Properties Partnership, LP, case SUP 2024-06.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Juan Paulette, Interim City Planner. This request is for a specific use permit for stone, sand, gravel, mineral extraction. The property is approximately 5 acres and located near the top of a hill with a terrain sloping eastward towards Bonita Creek. The property is mostly wooded and undeveloped except for an acre in the center that is being excavated. The owner is currently using the property for the extraction of dirt for other commercial properties in the area. Once the property is the appropriate grade, the owner plans to sell the property for future development. The front half of the property along Old Tyler Road is zoned B2 General Business, and the back half is zoned R4 Multifamily. This area is zoned with a mix of general business, multifamily, and heavy industrial. The property is surrounded by several legal non-conforming single-family homes, except for the east side, which is industrial use. There are a few undeveloped lots adjacent to the north and west across Old Tyler Road. The future land use designation is single-family residential and is not consistent with the current zoning of the area, which is zoned commercial but developed with residential uses. Staff finds that although the future land use designation of the property is not consistent with the current zoning, the proposed use is temporary. Approval of the specific use permit will not change the land uses permitted by the current underlying zoning. And this is the picture of the subject property from Old Tyler Road. And then looking inside of where they're excavating. There's some single-family homes to the west across Old Tyler Road. This slide shows the uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 13 notices to those property owners and have received no written responses in favor or in opposition to the request. Staff also held a neighborhood meeting for the property owners within 500 feet of the subject property on September 16th, and none of the surrounding property owners attended the meeting. On October 14th, the Planning and Zoning Committee voted unanimously to approve the request with the following conditions. Hours of our operation will be from 7 to 6 p.m. Monday through Sunday. Preserve the existing vegetative buffer within 25-foot width around all the property lines. Install and maintain silt fencing, and will expire in 12 months, and have additional street cleanup once a week to keep mud and debris from the roadway. And this concludes staff's presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the council. Also, the applicant is present if you have any questions for him or if he would like to speak.
Now open it, Jerry. Open it now.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Yeah, we've done public comment, I guess?
No.
Just questions.
Questions for Juan?
Okay. Was this extraction started without a permit?
It initially was started, and it was brought to our attention. We informed the applicant or the owner, and they applied for the specific use permit.
And my question is because I went out there, it's a really deep hole, probably 20, 30 feet.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that what it's going to be? Is it a swimming pool?
The applicant, he could probably explain a little better, but I spoke with the applicant, and he did say that they are planning to slope the north property line where it's like a cliff. They're going to slope it, make a gradual slope, and eventually lower the grade of the property, how it kind of steeps up towards along Old Tyler Road. They're going to try to level it and bring the grade down a little bit closer to the level of the road.
So the hill that's in front between the road and that extraction, that'll be level
It'll
too?
be level. According to the
So
applicant,
they
they're
could
gonna
build
bring it
houses
down.
or something if they wanted to or
Correct,
whatever?
for future development that is aligned with the current zoning.
I have a couple of questions. So when we approve this and then it goes forward, can the property owner dig all the way to China? Or, I mean, what, do we have any regulations about that? How deep or how? I'm just curious, because,
They do have-
we've had excavation things before, and now I'm just curious what, what our standards, or if we have standards about this or what.
They do have to follow the guidelines of the SWP3 report, and they do make periodical checks with the contractor to make sure they're following all the guidelines that have been agreed upon with that report. And like I said, ultimately, the plan is to develop the property.
So is the depth right now level with Old Tyler Road, or is it lower than Old Tyler Road, or what is the depth even now?
I'm not exactly
Or-
sure. That
Ma-
might be
Just-
the question for.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
My name is James Wood.
I was just wondering about the depth. If the digging, is it lower than Old Tyler Road, or is it the same, or is it the?
The current depth at the deepest point is slightly lower than Old Tyler Road, but we've got to go around the perimeter and slope the side, so it will be, we're going to end up with about a 2-foot rise from Old Tyler Road into the interior of the property,
Okay,
whereas originally it was probably 35 feet.
right.
It was tough there were houses there, I don't know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it was tough for tenants getting up there, according to the owner, from what he told me. So he's wanting to cut the elevation down. We're gonna level it out, leave it in a presentable condition that somebody could go in and build a typical house pad, put a foot of dirt and build a house. His goal is to sell the land, so.
Is there gonna be drainage problems, you think, or?
No, I mean, it's a mountain. It drops off into the
Yeah.
creek bottom on the back, so it's pretty simple to deal with any drainage issues, so. It's just getting the elevation down to where it's more presentable for somebody to have a home site.
It's really helpful to me to hear all that.
Yeah, appreciate
And
it.
the SW3P, there's tons of guidelines on drainage issues and so forth, and we have inspections every 2 weeks. They come out every 2 weeks, and with this rain we've had for the last 5-6 days, we'll have an inspection Monday, for sure. They come out after any rain, as soon as their schedule allows, so.
So unfinished questions with, for
Okay.
you. That was really, really helpful to me to hear the plan and to hear how it's followed up.
Okay.
So is this just for one house or how many houses?
It would be up to whoever purchased the property. The owner, he's not making any plans for development. He just wants to sell the property, and it was not an appealing piece of land as it sat. It was a mountain. So we're just cutting it down to grade so you can get into the property easier from Old Tyler Road. And he actually has a residential, I guess, builder here in town that's just bought a piece of property right beside it that's interested in it, but they've not made a deal or discussed anything. But he has no plans for it other than to sell the property to somebody else, and then they would have to get zoning changes or whatever.
So this would basically enhance that piece of property?
That's
with-
exactly what we're trying to do, is
Gotcha.
enhance that piece of property for future development,
Gotcha.
rather than just have a dead piece of dirt sitting there that nobody can do anything with. And it worked out that there was a project up the road that needed a lot of dirt, so.
Okay. That's it.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open the,
Can I ask our staff?
Sure.
So just in general on excavating, because this came up, a couple of years ago, there was another project. Do we have guidelines about excavations or, that's just in general?
Currently, we don't have any excavation permits. They're not required,
Okay,
but we are looking into possible making that
something that,
something that to have permits for excavation in the
Okay.
future.
if we're gonna do that, I would like, when we do that, to be
not to be so strict that we can't do what Mr. Wood and Mr. Mass is intending to do, is take a piece of land that is absolutely worthless and turn it into something that could be viable for single-family homes or whatever, and be put on the tax roll instead of just a worthless piece of land.
Correct, yes.
So,
Sorry, it's hard to push buttons for me. I don't have an opposing thumb. So, I think the simplest way when we would look at it would be from the beginning of whatever you have to the end, really to be two things. That the final grade, not as it's moving around, that the final grade doesn't make adjacent properties worse or accelerate the speed of which the water would naturally reach them. And then the other piece would be that any trucks in and out would have to maintain the roadway being clean. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really where you want to go with it. So it's kind of those parameters on the front and back end of it. And then I'd leave it to the Aggies, because they're even better at math than Cougar High, so, or St. Thomas, so.
Mayor and Council, Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. I was on site with our building official today. Just trying to get a lay of the land, wanted to make sure that I had eyes on it before we met tonight with you and went back and forth on questions and discussion. One of the things that we're talking through, I mean, there could be a lot of things that we evolve within our permits and some of our procedures and administration that wouldn't necessarily be bureaucratic, but could help facilitate our process a little bit better. And one of those things could be, as City Manager mentioned, a set of civil plans for final grading. We could require that at the front end of the permits. We could identify what the site should look like when that work is complete, or at least understand the intentions and have something to back it up when everything is done and the permit's expired. So we are talking through those things. If we get through the process and begin making those changes, we'll inform council.
Well, that's all real helpful.
Yeah, I think that would help a lot, because when you just go out there and see it, it's a little shocking at first, because you're like, there's a home up there and then this cliff, you know, and that is worrisome. If I owned that house, I'd be worried.
And
I
since,
want you to
since
respond.
it's my job to make you smile from resting face,
Yeah.
and you have an acting background, at least it's good for reenacting a scene from 300. But,
Well, no, I was like, I was visiting the Grand Canyon. I was like, oh.
but we do want to be cognizant of not making things worse, and in their case, they're actually, you might
Making
actually
it better.
reduce acceleration of water coming at least across the roadway if you've, I mean, so we will be mindful of that. And as Mike mentioned, it would probably be a before-after of, this is the current topo with topographic elevation shots, and then this is the proposed, and then at final inspection, when you're done with the excavation, you'd go back and take spot elevations and then confirm that, and if not, you'd have to. And Mike is well aware in another venue, when people do or don't take spot elevation shots, that is something we've dealt with in rapidly growing areas. I'll leave it at that.
I do remember you speaking about sometimes things don't go exactly how you plan, and I was just curious about that myself. And I know Case was going to say something.
Yes, Mayor, City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, Mayor, City Council, Director of Public Works, Case Opperman. I was also going to add that we are currently working on a erosion control ordinance as well, to sort of try to mitigate against some of these issues we've had in the past with, silt getting out of the sites and stuff like that. The current property in question, like Mr. Woods said, is got a SW3P already, and so they've got erosion control measures that are required by the state. But even on some of these projects that are less than an acre, which would not, by the state's requirements, need a SW3P, this ordinance will kind of address some of those erosion control issues that we've had in the past with certain developments. So I think that'll, kind of enhance our ability to control some of these things.
Okay,
That's
thank
really
you, Case.
helpful.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody from the audience have anything to say? If not, we'll close the session, the hearing. Council discussion, anybody have anything else?
No.
Entertain a motion.
Make the motion that we approve the specific use permit outlined in item 6A.
I'll second.
Have a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next item, 6B. Public hearing, consider approval of zone change from R2, or which would be industrial, right?
Yep.
Industrial to, heavy industrial to R4 multifamily for approximately 2.8 acres on lot 78S-5, City Block 56, located on 808 East Lane Drive and 2924 Hunter Street. This request has been submitted by the property owners Lee and Tracy Sanaz. Case file ZON 2024-03.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Juan Paulette, Interim City Planner. This property is located on the southwest corner of Hunter Street and East Lane Drive. The property is currently developed as a church with a parsonage. The property has two separate addresses for 911 purposes. The church is addressed off Hunter Street, and the house is addressed off East Lane Drive. The purpose of the zone change is to subdivide the property into two lots, separating the church from the parsonage, which is a single-family home, without creating a nonconformity. And this is a picture of the proposed subdivision. The property is zoned I-2 heavy industrial and is adjacent to a mix of residential, industrial, and commercial uses. The majority of the surrounding properties are zoned R4 and developed primarily with single-family homes. The adjacent properties to the south and west are zoned heavy industrial. The rest of the commercial properties to the south along Stallings Drive are zoned general business. The comprehensive plan designates this area as rural development in the future land use plan. This land use category is defined as sparsely populated areas with limited development that are still distinct from more urbanized areas. It also includes areas that are gradually transitioning into urban uses and development. Although the area does not fit the future land use plan, the proposed zoning is more compatible with the surrounding land uses. This is a picture of the church along Hunter Street and the parsonage with views from East Lane and some adjacent homes along Hunter and some more single-family homes on East Lane and some commercial properties to the south and north of the subject property. This slide shows the types of uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 14 notices to those property owners and have received no written responses in favor or in opposition of the request. And the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this on October 14th and voted unanimously to approve the request. This concludes staff's presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions from council. And the applicants are here if you have any questions for them.
Any questions for Juan? Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody want to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Any council discussion?
Mayor, I would move that we approve the zone change from I-2 heavy industrial to R4 multifamily for the property at 808 East Lane Drive and 2924 Hunter Street as presented.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next public hearing, item 6C. Consider approval of a zone change from R2, single family, to R3, two-family, for approximately 1 acre on lots 1 and 2 of the Larry Wade subdivision, lots 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, City Block 47, generally located on the north side of Power Street, approximately 350 feet east of Ritchie Street and Power Street intersection. This request has been submitted by the owner, Clifton White, case file ZON 2024-04.
Council, Juan Paulette, interim city planner. So these properties are located just east of Ritchie Street along the north side of Power Street. These are 7 lots totaling approximately 1 acre and are undeveloped with the exception of 1 lot that has a single-family home that will be removed. The applicant is proposing to construct 4 to 5 duplexes. Because of the size of the lots and the density requirements, 5 duplexes would be the maximum allowed. The last track on the east side is approximately 95 feet deep and does not meet the lot depth requirement of 100 feet. It would need a variance if it was to be developed. I also want to mention that the boundary line for the southeast and the southwest ward runs along Power Street. You have southeast ward to the north and the southwest ward to the south of Powers. This area is surrounded by R2 single-family and primary developed with single-family residences. There is a strip of R3 two-family lots along Ritchie Street, 1 block over to the west. In 2022, a similar zone change was approved for 10 undeveloped lots, 1 block to the east along Nash Street, which are now developed with 10 duplexes. The future land use plan designates the subject properties as single-family residential, which is described as conventional, 1-family detached dwellings, which also includes duplexes. R3 zoning meets the comprehensive plan designation by maintaining and encouraging compatibility with existing uses and promotes growth inward. And this is the picture of the subject property and the house that will be removed. Some more houses along Power Street. The picture on the bottom right is city property, and it's adjacent to the west of the subject properties, and it has a lift station on it. And these are the new duplexes that were built a couple of years ago that are east of the subject property. This slide shows the types of uses within the 200-foot notification area. Staff sent out 25 notices to those property owners and have received 1 written response in opposition of the request. Because of the limited space, the property owner opposing the request stated concerns about density, on-site parking, and impacts on water and sewer infrastructure demands. Staff held a neighborhood meeting for the property owners within 500 feet of the subject property on September 18th. One of the neighboring property owners attended the meeting in support of the zone change and the development. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item on October 14th. At the meeting, staff addressed questions about density, stating the maximum number of duplexes possible on the 7 lots would be 5 duplexes if built in accordance with city standards. Staff also confirmed with the engineering department that water and sewer infrastructure is adequate for the proposed development. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to approve the request. And this concludes staff's presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And the applicant is also here if you have questions for him or if he would like to speak.
Any questions for Juan?
I got one. As far as the rezoning in that area, and you still have single-family dwellings, how will that enhance that area? What will it do for the property area?
Well, it'll increase the tax base, and as I mentioned, in the comprehensive plan, it states that duplexes are considered single-family residential in the comprehensive plan. So it does go along with the current uses in the area.
Okay, one of the houses you showed on there was a gentleman's house that's 90 years old. And in speaking with him, he had a lot of opposition because of them living in that area for so long. And they did not want to be put in between two duplex areas. One you've got on the east end. Now you're going to put this one on this end, which will put the rest of the residences right in the middle. So that was the objection that he had, and some of the others that did not come out and speak, because when you say you had these meetings, these are elderly people who don't really understand what this consists of.
Would you go back to that slide of where this is again, Juan, please?
The aerial, or?
Yeah, the map, yeah, there you go. Okay.
While we're looking at that map, if I heard you correctly, and I want to make sure that I have clarity on this, so the south side of Power Street is in the southwest ward, and the subject property itself is in the southeast. Is that correct?
Correct, it's in the southeast.
But it's just right on that line.
Right there on the divide.
And you also said that if we should approve this zone change, that the applicant, to be able to construct, would have to go to the zoning board of adjustment for a variance.
Only on the property on the far east. It's shorter than the rest of them. It's about 5 feet short of the.
But all the others have the appropriate depth.
They do. And if you look to the west of the lots, the very lot on the end, there's 2 lots that are pretty narrow. So those by themselves are non-conforming because they're not wide enough. It has to be 50 feet. But together, those 2 lots can make 1 lot, and you can build a duplex on those 2 lots. They would just straddle the middle property line.
So are those lots 8 and 9 that you're talking about that need to be replatted?
Not necessarily replatted, but they can just build over that lot line in the middle. Because he owns both lots, so he can just build over it, and it would just be sold as 1 lot in the future.
So there's duplexes on either side?
On the east side.
East side, okay. On down towards,
on Sanders.
okay, yeah, got you, okay, yeah, right there.
Yeah, those are to the east,
Okay.
about a block over.
So what's the R2 to R3, what does that mean?
So
What does that add to the equation?
2 streets over.
R2 is single-family, R3 is duplex. Both are considered single-family as far as the use. Just one's allows for duplexes, which, like I said, in the comprehensive plan, still is considered single-family. It just allows for that structure to be built on that zoning.
No, I'm a little thick here. Explain again. So R2, you can build a duplex.
No,
You can't?
No, it's just single-family.
So what's
Single-
R1 then?
R1 is also single-family. It's just less, it's less dense. It requires a bigger lot size, whereas R2 is more dense. It allows for a smaller lot size. So you can put more houses in R2 than you can R1.
So in R3, can you put more houses than you can in R2?
It's similar. They both have the minimum lot dimensions.
Why do we
for
have those two
single-family.
distinctions?
It's just one allows for duplexes and one doesn't. R3 allows for duplex, R2 is single-family only.
Is there any concern that we're changing the nature of the neighborhood by adding, I mean, are we getting rid of single-family houses in that neighborhood?
No, this is, because you can build a single-family house on R3 if you desire. So you can build a duplex or single-family. So you could still.
But just because you can doesn't mean that you're required to. You would have the ability to be more flexible.
Correct.
But now the only thing that could be built on these lots would be single-family residences.
Yes.
And the distinction between single-family residences and duplexes, which the code may say are single-family, but that is not the same as a single-family detached dwelling, right?
Correct. It's just two single-family units under one roof.
Base,
It's a duplex.
which is a duplex.
Duplex, yes.
Is this something we're gonna fix in that committee, or?
I don't want to speak to directly to this one, but I think as we look at the comp plan down the road and zoning, and I'm not the biggest fan of zoning per se, the actual land usage and what things are. So like if a duck is a duck, and it should be simple, and I hate to use, no offense, planner in the room. I don't like using planner speak. Yes, I've worked in zoned and unzoned cities both. And I've seen unzoned cities with subdivision ordinance and historic overlays and things look a certain way. And then I've seen zoned cities and incompatible land uses. So the only rant and rave you've probably heard other than vaping from me, not that I vape, has been about things doing infill as they were originally planned and platted to the extent you can, because streets were designed based on those plats, setbacks, drainage, and a host of other things. I'm a fan of really putting neighborhoods back with reasonable infill that actually brings back the character of those neighborhoods, not necessarily changing them. But that's just me. And I think we can flesh this out more as we get deeper into the comp plan. But I do think there are some things that are a little illogical, if, not to put you on the spot, but if 2 is 1 and 1 is 2, then, go Cougs. But at a point, it is kind of a nonsensical exercise. In many places, a duplex will also default into closer to a multifamily type. They won't call it single family. So I think we're into kind of planner speak, not from Juan's perspective. He can in defense of Juan, he's only interpreting what we have. And in this case, and this is where I default to Jerry, I think you'll have to look at this for what the code says right now and what it is, and within your discretion, yes or no. And I think that's all we can do. We can't recode. We can't write the code right now as we're going. But I think you have to interpret it. What's the right answer as the code is written, as it's currently proposed before you today?
Well, to me, there's the people that own the property. They have a goal, and it's their right to do what's legal in there. But the other question is it going to make the neighborhood a better place, or is it, are we helping or hurting here?
Well, and
it's very subjective.
I know you've got
don't know.
like financial impact, that line there. There is from a tax basis or from a property owner basis, you would say that's a positive. You could probably, following reason and logic, come to an alternate conclusion if you're boxed in between land uses that are not similar. And the only time would tell if you were to put your place up for sale later and someone says, well, I would have bought it, but there's something of a different structure. I don't want to be next to that. And that may not. Or it might be the flip side. Someone may come in and want to buy those structures in between and put the same thing in. So I think it's kind of like, what's the value of something? Until you put it up for sale and it closes, you don't really know what it is.
Yeah. But I think we need to also think about the value of that 90-year-old man who feels, you know, boxed in, or that he's losing the quality of his life, even though he does no financial gain or loss from it. But we do have to take that into consideration, you know.
Juan, could you go to the notification map? This is just detail oriented. I know we didn't meet the opposition threshold in this case, but what happens, like in this case, where the city owns property? Does that lower that threshold of what you'd have to have for 80%? Because we own a pretty significant portion of that 200-foot, right? But we ultimately, the council makes that decision, so we can't be opposed to it. So how would that work? Just
Well, you would take out that percentage, I guess, of whatever that part of the city property falls in that yellow area there on the map, or tan area, and the rest of it would be your 100%, and then you would look.
that would be your
Yeah.
the part of that hole instead of the
Correct.
entire 200-foot.
Correct, because the city couldn't have any part, say
Right.
one way or the other, in that
One's making the
determination, yeah.
Thank you.
So, in looking at this map, it is a change, right? Because the proposed zoning right there is right in the middle of the single-family owner-occupied and single-family renter.
Correct. The
So that's
majority
a
of those
pretty-
houses, well, all of them are single-family.
Right, right. And there are a lot of owner-occupied, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me there's more owner-occupied now. I mean, I think we have been increasing the,
It does, yeah, because there's been some new single-family homes built along North Sanders that are
Right.
owner-occupied.
right.
And the majority, a lot of those, as you see on Powers, are owner-occupied.
Right, right. I think it has been moving towards more single-family owner occupied, and so this does appear to be a change in the other direction than where the city has been.
Yeah, well, we're just going off, what the comprehensive plan
Right,
says.
right, right. I know, I'm
and-
not,
Yeah.
but we were, I think some of the questions we're trying to assess
Yes, I see
where,
what you're pointing.
and the property owners and and their concerns. And if, it's not just that, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's not just that one owner, there were others that were afraid to speak or
Right.
didn't want to come. So probably many of those single-family owner-occupied, they have their houses there.
The one guy that did the opposition just built a new home right there.
For himself, or?
No, not for himself. He had a home that burned, and he put it back. Now, he's not going to be occupying that place. He's going to be renting that as well. So that was his opposition, that when him just finished building, he didn't want to come in with somebody with duplexes.
Right.
And, because you're looking at the value of the property and what your property value would end up being in the end of your investments. And so with that being put on the line, a lot of people the older people there weren't aware of what it would impose as far as traffic, as far as changing the neighborhood, and being that there's one already up on the east side of it.
Right.
And as he was speaking, if he pulls that one back up on Nash Street, would you pull that back? I'll show you something. Where the Nash Street, you'll see a parking lot out here to your right.
Right.
Well, the parking lot is for both of these complexes. In observation of going by and seeing right in front, that's city property. Well, people are not parking in that parking lot, they're parking in front of their house on city property. So what my concern was, if someone does actually get hurt on city property and tries to sue us, then what? So if we start to doing these duplexes and putting them in these neighborhoods, we're setting ourselves up for lawsuits versus single-family dwelling. And so you would give more people a reason to own their homes versus having to have people move in and out and not know who's coming in and out of your neighborhood. That would be good to do duplexes and things close to where you have apartment complexes and things of that nature. But to put it in a neighborhood and just set it right next to you, I don't think it would be a thing that I would want.
And the applicant is here as well, if you have specific ownership questions or about the property.
Open hearing. Anybody got any more?
Ask questions to the applicant.
Okay,
You have that opportunity, or you can open the public hearing if there's any questions.
come on up.
If I may. My name is Clifton White. I'm the owner of the property that's located on Power Street. And everything that you guys are seeing is correct. I was born and raised in Nacogdoches. I actually live in Dallas now, but I'm in a transition. I worked for Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 25 years, and I've since retired. And my goal is to beautify the neighborhood. I know the ins and outs of that neighborhood. I know Old Tyler Road. The trenches that he's digging now in that neighborhood, I once played in those woods. It was an adventure for me. But now I know the struggles. The 90-year-old person that he speaks of, all of those are my relatives. Betty Wade is my wife's great aunt. So we inherited the property. The property that's close to the city, we also own that, and that was her dad's property. So we are trying to make Nacogdoches better. We're trying to make the tax rate grow. So I'm not here for self-gain. I'm here for the community. I'm talking about affordable housing. I know that those individuals that live in that neighborhood can't afford to build a single-family house and pay for it. They don't even have the down payment. The majority of the people there. We're not trying to box anyone in, because the neighborhood next to my property is the city's property. No one is going to build there. It's no property there. Across the street from Powers, you got the second street is Doff Street. Right on that is already R3. They just built another duplex right there as we speak. It's not listed on the map because it wasn't there when I requested this change. But since then, they have built a duplex right at the end of, it's on Ridges Street at the end of Powers and Doff Street. So I'm here, I'm asking the city, the mayor, the city council members to take this request seriously, because I love Nacogdoches. This is my retirement. I retired in 2016. I'm coming back to the community. I went to Nacogdoches High. I know the opposition and the struggles of the community. I didn't know that I was poor when I lived in that neighborhood. I thought it was normal. But now that I've grown, I know that I can make a change here in Nacogdoches. And it starts with affordable housing. My plan is not to just build a duplex and rent. I'm trying to build a condominium style, 2-story, something that they hadn't seen before in that neighborhood. The people 2 and 3 houses down where you say the 90-year-old, those are my people. That's my grandfather's brother. And when it comes down to it, I know all of the people in the neighborhood. The Wade addition is our family. The people that came out and spoke during the public hearing for the event, they were actually moved to Houston. They came in just to speak on the community behalf, not on my behalf, but the need for change. I'm a catalyst for change. I'm here to change. I graduated from Nacogdoches High School in 1985. I graduated from Stephen F. Austin in 1990. I graduated from Prairie View with my master's in education and second master's in counseling. So I'm here to bring back to Nacogdoches, not to diminish the assets here in Nacogdoches, but enhance it. So I want to beautify the neighborhood. I want to actually let people see that it is a place that you can visit. Richard Street, where I grew up at, we played baseball there. I played baseball all my life here in Nacogdoches, Summer League baseball. I'm a Dragon to heart. So even though we're not doing so well right now, I'm still a Dragon to heart. So I'm here to let you know that the concerns that you have is not the community concerns. They are not here. And I found out that Mr. Huckabee is actually our city council member for that area, if I'm correct.
Mr. Williams, actually.
Mr. Williams, so Mr. Williams?
Yes.
So you the totally end of Power Street. So I've spoke to him at one point, but I hadn't had the privilege of meeting all of the council members. This is my first time. So I've been here because I'm concerned. I didn't just stand by the wayside. So I listened to the concerns that I have. But I have a greater concern because I'm vested in this community. I'm not just a visitor. I'm not just renting a single family dwelling. That house that burned, it was a rental property. And those people were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, which the house burned. So I keep my property clean. I mow. I know my neighbors across the street. They call me if anything is going on. I'm also tearing down the house. I didn't renovate the houses to make money. I tore the houses down because they were eyesores. They've been in existence. That was my great auntie's house that's still standing right now. It's been there for over 100+ years. The tin roof. I have no problem with tin roof, but I want to enhance the neighborhood. I don't want to create any problems for the community. Thank you for listening.
So are these going to be for sale?
Yes, I'm the affordable housing. This is my comprehensive plan that I'm trying to bring in with the city's comprehensive plan. Your plan is already changing R2 to R3 for duplexes. So I'm trying to just stay in line with the plan, but also bring in a greater influx of people to the community. Make it available to people who actually want to stay there, but not only make it available, but make it affordable to the individuals that are coming into the community.
So these will be for sale and not for lease?
Actually, yes, sir.
Okay.
That's right now I'm researching affordable housing and how to go through the channels to do it. And
There's a way to do it.
right, yeah, absolutely. And since I had the meeting with planning and zoning, it gave me a new focus on different means because I'm not aware. I'm not a builder, but it is my community, and I do care about my community. Like I said, I was born and raised in Nacogdoches. I was raised on the hill. I lived on Rose Street, 2 streets over. And it's also Summit. It's called Summit Hill, or it used to be Oak Hill Plaza. But it's a project right in the middle of that surpasses R2 and R3. It's been there for years, and I know this. But my aunt stays right next to the duplexes that they just created, which the owner of that house is the rights. So even though the ownership appears to be ownership, it's a lot of rental in that area. So the owners are not living there. Those are the people that actually are renting the houses and making a profit off of the individuals that have never owned those houses. So I wanna be a catalyst for change. I wanna change the whole environment of the neighborhood, and I wanna make it affordable for the individuals that can live in that neighborhood and afford to live in the neighborhood to actually give them a chance to have ownership.
Well, I appreciate your passion.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what we all want,
you're the kind of person building places that we look for, actually.
Yes, sir,
You
absolutely.
know.
You know Jack Wade and Bertie Wade, you know all.
Birdie Wade, yes, sir, absolutely.
I miss her
Yeah,
a lot.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second.
not a problem.
So you've told us your plan if we approve the zone change. What's your plan if we don't approve the zone change?
I'll still continue to do the same thing, affordable housing. I not only own their property there, I own property on Old Tyler Road. I own 3 acres there. That's already R3. And I'm planning on building there. So it's just giving me the structure to create a more affordable housing around the community. Old Tyler Road, that's my grandmother's property. It's 100 years plus we've owned that property. We paid taxes from day one, and we don't have a building there, but we pay taxes every year. And we've done it for over 70-something years. My grandmother died over 20 years ago, and I still pay the taxes because I wanna see the progress in Nacogdoches. That's what I'm here for.
So, I have a question, I think, for our attorney, Terry. Can we put this off until the next, I don't know how long we have, and let Mr. Williams, visit and talk through with the neighbor? I would really like a little bit more information before I cast my vote. And also, I of course I know Bertie and I knew Larry and everybody, but, so often our plans don't necessarily get put in place the way we think they will be. So I'd like a little more concrete information about, you know, the funding you hope to get. And it makes a huge difference to me that they will be sold, that the duplexes will be sold rather than rented. As you said before, there are a lot of rental properties, particularly out-of-town renters have not had as much as good a track record with keeping properties safe. So is it possible to punt and put this off or not, or?
It is possible. Under our zoning ordinance, there's the ability for the governing body to continue a public hearing like this. There would have to be a motion and approval of the council to do so. However, it would require setting that for a specific date, time, and place, plus all the notices that were sent out before would have to be resubmitted and redone all over again. So that would be required for all of that.
We'd also have to post it in the newspaper.
Right.
Correct.
At which incurs an additional cost
Correct.
also.
Blaine, what's your thinking?
My thinking on it is, we didn't have an idea of what you were trying to build and what your plan was. Now that you said that you're gonna sell them rather than rent them, it throws a different light on it. Because from just seeing building duplexes put us in a mindset of, here we go with renters as long as they can afford it, and then they're gone. But if you're building something that somebody, and when you and I spoke, I talked to you about single-family dwelling. And that's my main concern, is that we have somebody that can afford and stay in that area with ownership, not leasing and hood use. Because when you start to do that, then you start to have a revolving door effect of who's in and out of your community. So with you explaining it, it does a lot of clarification for us. Whereas it will help us to enhance the community, as you say, and the tax roll would help. Now, my thing is, we can go back and revisit this. I can sit down and talk with you, I can talk with the neighbors, and we can find out exactly what we need to do and go forward from there.
I agree. But it put me in a precarious situation because I thought I was following the guidelines.
You are.
You know, I thought I was doing everything, and I attempted to speak with you,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked you, at that point, but you didn't. I guess you pressed for time, so we wasn't able to have that dialogue.
Right.
So, but as far as the city council is concerned, I vested a lot of time and money into this because I paid the taxes on the property when my aunt was actually placed in the facility. So, I had to catch up on a lot of taxes. I paid 3 and 4 times the tax base for the property that the property wasn't worth. But I had, because of the family, I had to do that. So I'm only asking the city council, I do know your concerns, but I know the community concerns as well. And I have more support from the community than I do opposition. I hadn't, the one person that sent a letter, I haven't seen that person, and they are actually renting the property.
Mm-hmm.
So the opposition's there, I don't have any problems with the neighborhood. I like I said again, I was born and raised in that neighborhood. So I frequented, my aunt still lives there. So Bobby Nell Moore is my aunt, and Frank Sierras is my uncle. So I still go home. I be here every week. So I never let the property grow up. I'm in compliance with code compliance. I mow regularly. I hadn't cut the persimmon trees down. I still pick the persimmons. So
Is it,
I just, and I asked the city council if they would just move toward my favor. I would greatly.
Has something he wanted to.
Typically, even with, if you have a series of duplexes or townhomes, let's just take that as well. Typically, if they're for sale, there'll also be with that, either a homeowners association and some level of deed restrictions that the developer would usually have, because you typically would want to have, now, in their case, you probably have a monthly maintenance fee, so everything's mowed all at the same time. I would think that, however y'all look at this, if they're for sale, if that's the pro forma, then it would typically follow that same scenario that I've seen countless other places when you have, like you've mentioned, more than one dwelling under one roof, so you do have consistent property maintenance across the board, if they're individually owned.
Is there a way to specify that in this public hearing or in how we vote?
I don't know that, I think I'd have to defer to Jerry, but I'm just, in terms of if there was a pathway for assurance that things were indeed heading the direction for ownership, there typically is homeowners association and deed restrictions to run with that entire pro forma.
can you build the same thing with an R2, on an R2 as you do on R3? I know I've asked this before, but it would stop you from building if we keep it at what it is. Is that correct?
Well, not in moving forward with your comprehensive plan that y'all have for the future. Your future comprehensive plan, I think, it encompasses R3 as well. So it's R2 and R3 in your future comprehensive plan. But to answer that question about the neighborhood association, I could do one better. I can, as part of the sale, I can require myself, I can create the neighborhood association for that community. Now, I would need the city help for the entire neighborhood, but for those particular properties, because I would be the owner and selling them, I can create it. I'm also the president of my neighborhood association. So I'm active in the community. So I'm familiar with the do's and don'ts and the bylaws of the neighborhood association. So anything that I have to put in place to get it done, I'm willing to do so.
Yeah.
Do we need to open this hearing?
Is everybody done with asking questions of the applicant?
far as the question, if you can do townhomes in R2, it's strictly single family. So it would have to be rezoned to R3 to do the townhome or something similar where you could have ownership with multiple dwelling units.
So I think I have to, you presented a very good case. I won't suggest that you haven't. But when we change this zoning, that assumes that you own the property in perpetuity and you're a good actor. I believe that you're a good actor, but we have to behave as though you're not going to be the owner forever, because we're responsible for the zoning the zoning runs with the land. So I think we're talking about assurances here. We want to know what you're going to do with more certainty than we can have determined right now. That's my take.
I'd just like to add, the other end of Powers is already rezoned. And they're already the same, R3 has been rezoned from R2 to R3 for Powers and Dow Street. And I'm at the east end of the neighborhood. And and it's also already across the street, as I stated, it's already is rezoned, it's zoned for R3. So that community they already built in the last 30 days, they already built another duplex. So if the community is beginning to grow. So I'm just trying to enhance the neighborhood.
Would it be a financial hardship on you if they did put it off for whatever, would it be 3 weeks or a month or something to do that again?
Well, it would have to be the next P and Z meeting.
So it'd in essence
And,
be a
well,
month from now.
Juan, how much advance notice did you have to have for
3 weeks.
minimum?
Send out the notices and
Because I know at least 15 days for publication for the city council meeting. So it wouldn't be the next city council meeting, it would be the one after at the earliest.
and it would just go back to, it would only go back to city council. It wouldn't have to go to P and Z again.
Right.
Yeah, it would
Okay.
just basically.
They're not gonna, P and Z's not gonna change anything. They've already,
So it would just come back to this body.
Assuming there's no changes.
Right, if you just want time to think and just kind of table it, would it be a table or
It would be a continuance.
continuance?
We would need a motion to continue it and we would set it, I guess, for the next city count, not the next city council meeting, but the one after, December, what, 3rd? At the earliest.
I don't know if to leave or
we need to, if y'all don't have any more questions, we need to open the hearing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You can have
thank
a
you
seat
for
for
your
right
time.
now.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll open the public hearing now. We've heard from the owner. Is there anybody in opposition to this here at all? Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
There's somebody before.
Okay, go ahead.
How's everybody doing?
You,
Name's Wade Patton.
I didn't-
I'm a
I
resident of Nacogdoches.
I didn't recognize you,
It's
Wade.
been a minute, man. How
Yeah.
you been doing?
You're getting old.
Class of 74.
You're getting old and
Class of
fat, that's what
73.
you're getting.
Blessed by the best, wouldn't have it no other way. But I come to speak on behalf of what he's doing in that community. I'm familiar with it. And no one else is investing really in that community. I'm familiar with it for 50 years. I was a part of that community as a band member and a lot of other reasons. But at any rate, what he's doing is going to really enhance the community, develop it. I'm familiar with the people over there. I'm in the landscaping business as well. So what we're trying to do is beautify all our communities. And he's in a greater position to develop. And so certainly wish y'all were giving the extent of that. And this is going to only lead to other ventures. you know. And so we're just trying to be in compliance with what you need, as well as solve an issue in Nacogdoches with housing. And there's only one other thing I want to mention while I'm here. You all know where Robert McCrimmon Park is. We need some restrooms out there. We got 2 porta potties. I watched it through May, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, 4th of July, and Labor Day. So let's see what we can do about that. But I wish you would really give Mr. White some consideration, and he's gonna do some great things here. God bless.
Thank you. Did I close it? Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, I'll just make a statement. We can do whatever y'all want to do, but I'm going to tell you, this, Mr. White, and I know Wade, have known in his family for years, you are exactly what we have been wanting to come into some of these communities, or any of these communities in this town, to make them better, you know. I used to deliver furniture when we had houses down there on Richardson Street that in the winter, the refrigerators would freeze because it was so cold, and the Freon would freeze, you know. Well, I hadn't been down there lately, but it seems like a lot of those are gone. So this, you are an example, and it's not like you live in Dallas, even though you do. You have an investment in this community, and it's your family, you know, and that's all I have to say. If it's whatever the council wants to do.
I'd like to make a motion if I can.
Sure.
So I make a motion that we approve the zone change from R2 to single family to R3 in approval of what he wants. I think it's inevitable, whether we put it off or not, that's my feeling about it. So I would like to make that motion to approve tonight.
I'll second. Any discussion?
I make a motion that we,
We already have one motion.
Unless he wants to amend your motion.
amend it,
You want to amend it?
Okay.
All right.
that, we come back to this and, have discussion with Mr. White so that we can be fully, clear of what he got going.
That's not gonna be a proper motion.
I'll withdraw my motion and let him do his motion. Is that okay?
Well, I think we've got a motion and a second. We need to vote on it,
Okay.
because it's seconded.
Okay.
Right.
All
So so we need a vote, and then if it doesn't pass, then you can raise your motion.
Okay.
So we're going back to the first motion to approve it for tonight.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
3 against 2, motion fails. Now, do we have another motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we, go back and, meet with, Mr. White and bring this back to our meeting for December, 2nd,
Third.
3rd,
So is the,
for approval.
so I'll second it, that we continue this public hearing until December 3rd. Is that correct?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next item, also a public hearing. Item 6D, consider amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, Chapter 78, Signs, Article 1, in general, Article 4, Permits, and Article 5, Regulations for on-premises signs for districts, to define feather-type signs and allow for further control of placement, maintenance, and the number of times these signs can be used throughout the year. Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This item is to amend the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78, regarding signs. but specifically to define feather-type signs and allow for further control of placement, maintenance, and the number of times these signs can be used throughout the year. This preceded me, but if you'll recall, there was a joint workshop between council and P&Z to discuss various ordinance amendments. This was one that was identified as something council had asked staff to move forward with, proposed amendments to as one that could move forward without additional discussion. It had been discussed at the workshop. We've identified some things that hopefully will address council's concerns. Some of those include just observation of an increasing number of these signs around town. They're up for long periods of time. The materials typically that are used to make these signs aren't intended for long-term use. So what you're seeing is deterioration, discoloration, tattered signage. What we're proposing is that we, one, define this within the sign ordinance as a feather sign. And I'll show you some pictures just from screenshots along North Street. That we allow feather signs in B1, B2, B3, and M zoning districts, much like other signs that are allowed within this ordinance. And then I'll touch on one that was a condition requested by P&Z as part of their recommendation to allow these same feather signs in R4 districts for multifamily apartments only, to be consistent with apartments that exist currently in B2. Here's a screenshot of various locations. This was just along North Street, but you probably can identify others that you've seen around town. What we're attempting to show is signs that if this ordinance were currently in place, these would be not in compliance with the current ordinance or the future ordinance. Too close together, high number, creating visibility issues, or just in a state of deterioration where those signs really need to be addressed. And we have no mechanism because it's not defined in the ordinance, so this creates some clarity for code enforcement to go out and address these issues. What are we speaking of specifically? So as far as definitions, we're defining feather signs. Teardrop, there's other terms that have been used in other cities. Super flags is one that I'm familiar with. But essentially means a sign in a feather, flutter, square, teardrop, half-drop shape, usually self-supported or supported by a flexible pole, firmly affixed to the ground. These signs are not currently prohibited by ordinance, but we would address those in various sections within the sign ordinance specific to certain districts. Right now, we don't have a fee because they're not identified. We would establish a permit process for feather signs, and to be comparable with others that are in the existing sign ordinance, that would be $25 per application. It was brought up during planning and zoning whether that would be per sign or per application. This would be a per application fee. So if a property owner wanted to put 6 signs that met the requirements, the distance requirements, other restrictions that I'll cover in a moment, that would be $25 for that one application. So some of the other restrictions that would be part of allowing feather signs to be used, again, securely attached to the ground so there wouldn't be any movement, so they wouldn't end up being an obstacle that would possibly intervene with vehicles on a nearby roadway. They would be located in areas so they wouldn't create visual obstructions, maximum height and maximum radius for those signs, pretty much restricting them to what you see, the current feather flags that you currently see. They should be maintained in good repair, can't be illuminated, spacing no more than 50 feet. This would reduce the volume of flags. If a property owner decided to use them, they'd be limited in the number based on the width of their property and the frontage. And then no more than 4 feather sign permits per year and restricted to 30 days at a time. Typically where property owners have found use for these signs have been during special events, grand openings, things that where they want to bring temporary but special attention to their property. That falls in line with how these signs are typically used. We did have, our contracted planner did pull together some research. I know some of our staff participated in that as well, looking at a few other examples of similar ordinances or similar sign ordinance restrictions. They did fall in line with what we are proposing to council tonight. Simply that's separation limits, distance limits, limited time frames, and then just maintenance requirements that they be maintained to a certain condition. And again, I'll remind council that planning and zoning did support this with the condition that these signs also be allowed in R4 for multifamily apartments specifically, so that those multifamily apartments in R4 would have the same allowances as those in B2. And I'll entertain any questions after the public hearing.
Are flags that they put on flexible poles, are they in this thing? Do they qualify for that? Because I see a lot of them around town where, like, when SFA has a game, they put a flag on a flexible pole. I'm not against it, I'm just asking.
I don't know if that was
Would it be considered a feather type sign?
I don't think that falls in with our definition.
Certain signs don't require permits, and that might fall under the ones that don't require.
Yeah.
Is that a fact or just a speculation?
I'd have to look and see to verify, but I can get back with you.
Thank you.
Sure. We can provide more clarity on that too.
Do you have enough code enforcement to take care of this, or would you have to get more code enforcement people?
Again, if you want to speak to the code enforcement discussions, that was part of us crafting these particular ordinances. This wouldn't be, it could be proactive if it were observed during code enforcement officers' regular duties. It also could be reported. We do have a 311 system. There is a reporting feature for code violations. We would utilize that system as well.
We did speak, we had a meeting with code enforcement, and they were in agreement with these terms. That they said that it wouldn't overburden them, and they would be able to regulate them.
I'll remember that when they come back asking for extra employees.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Nope. I'll open the public hearing. Any comments from the audience?
I'm Dr. Groman. I think this is a wonderful thing to help beautify our city, but I think another really important factor is safety, particularly near intersections, or just distracted driving from these fluttering flags. So people can announce what they want to announce. Most likely, this is going to take some of the small smoke shops and just let them have one flag. And that's a good thing because it's less temptation for all the young people that are abusing these substances. And the last thing I want to say is usually with an ordinance like this, you would consider some kind of punitive fine if they fail to comply, because if not, they won't comply. So that's something to consider to put in this motion to bring about what we want to do is make our city more beautiful and more effective for the people that live here.
Okay, any other comment? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion with the council?
Is there any sort of fine for, does it fall along the same lines as the existing ordinance?
Correct. We have enforcement provisions in our sign ordinance currently.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Chapter 78, Signs, Article 1, et cetera, that we approve it.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to take a break for 2 minutes.
5 minutes?
5 minutes.
2 minutes. And we'll be back in just a minute. Next item is item 6E. Public hearing, consider amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, including Chapter 46, Health and Sanitation, Article 3, Smoking, Pollution Control, and Chapter 118, Zoning. Article 1, in general, Article 3, District Regulations, and Article 4. Supplementary district regulations to allow for additional clarification and requirements for tobacco and vape stores in the City of Nacogdoches. Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. Mike.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. This item, much like 6D, is a continuation of Council's direction to staff to identify proposed amendments for certain ordinances that were discussed on August 22nd in a joint meeting with Planning and Zoning Commission. Based on some general concerns that many other cities have had, and what's being proposed tonight is something, we'll touch on some of the cities that were identified, but this particular amendment comes from some concerns about the proliferation of these stores in town, about their proximity to certain sensitive uses such as hospitals, schools, churches, parks, and other smoke shops, their proximity to those shops. What we're proposing to amend is, one, modifying the definition. We have a definition for tobacco stores. We're extending that definition to include vape and e-cigarette, almost as one definition, to be clear about what we're identifying as far as certain retail developments, but also create a distinction between these types of stores and other stores that don't primarily sell tobacco and vape. So other stores would be like grocery stores or convenience stores that may sell e-cigarettes or vape, but it's not a primary product of their business, of the store's uses. So what we're doing tonight is providing you updates to that, and I'll include, that would be in Chapter 46 regarding the definition under health and sanitation, and then Chapter 118 zoning, restricting these particular stores not only to certain districts, but within a certain radius, and in this case, 1,000-foot buffer from some of those sensitive uses I mentioned. One thing I'll call your attention to, this does not include grocery stores, department stores, or other convenience stores as part of this particular ordinance definition. Again, it's primary sales of e-cigarette, vape, tobacco. So we wanted to make that distinction when there were some concerns that were brought up in discussion, so we want to make sure and clear that in the definition. And mimic that in other parts of our ordinance in 118 as well. So in 118.326, we do include a line item for retail tobacco, vape, and smoke stores requiring a special or a specific use permit. And if those are approved, it would be allowed in B1, B2, B3, I1, and I2, again, prohibited in medical district areas. But again, specific use permit does require independent council approval. I'll call your attention to the 1,000-foot radius as item 118.326A, and then measurement of those distances, how staff would identify those distance requirements from the property lines or the building setbacks. Comparison of some cities. Again, there are many cities in Texas that have ordinances of this type and include these particular stores, and as well as the buffer radius. We're showing some of those here on this table, but there's many others. What we want to do is make sure we're not out of bounds in how we've structured ours, and that it makes sense considering the number of sensitive uses, different hospitals, churches, schools within our community, and what the proliferation of these stores could be if there were no restrictions. This map here identifies, again, we may not have captured all. This was a GIS-based search identifying what, from the store frontage and from the details of the building structures on these particular locations, convey as primary uses of tobacco, vape, and e-cigarette stores. There's a number of them. A lot of them are on North Street, and then a lot of them run, still understanding the streets here, up University. So you see some of them would be, if there were new tenants, if there were new stores that opened today and this ordinance were in place, they would not be allowed. The stores that are currently open and operating are not affected by this change. They will be grandfathered. If there were a change of use of those facilities or any other facilities that would otherwise be grandfathered, that would cause the ordinance to go into effect for those particular structures.
So if one vape store goes out and another one comes in,
If that requires a new permit, I'll just put it that way. If that requires a new permit from the city, then we would probably be enacting the new ordinance to apply.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it would be, if it's a change of use versus change of occupant. So if it changes hands and nothing else changes, that's one scenario.
It would be allowed.
But if there's an interruption in that use, one goes away,
Right.
is that correct? And then you have to have a new CO, like everything gets cleared out, it's just empty space?
There may be exceptions in some cases or another, but
Is that
generally, if we're re-permitting the use.
Is that correct, Jerry? So if it wouldn't just be if one turns into a pizza place first, that's an obvious change of use, but if one goes to nothing, there's no occupant and it's blank space, you typically have it, and everything's moved out, you typically have to have a new inspection and a CO.
Correct, and depending on, and if it's B1, B2, B3, it would have to require an SUP at that point, I think, so, based on the new ordinance.
Even if it were allowed, it would go through an SUP process.
If it was in industrial, that's as a matter of right under the.
But if you have Acme vape shop or whatever, and you just sell Acme vape shop to somebody else, then that's still grandfathered in, is that correct?
Correct.
So long as they're operating it, yes.
This is the extent to which we can regulate effectively. This is it.
Okay. I think that's all I had. That is my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Well, so the current ones can continue to operate,
Yes, they can.
but the new ones are under a different set of rules.
If there are new ones that aren't already operating and in place today, yes.
Does that set you up, I mean, it seems a little bit unfair, or protective or something, and I'm just asking, but does that set you up for being sued if I want to come into town and open this shop? And why is it fair for one, not for me?
It would apply just as any other ordinance change might apply to a property owner or something coming in after the fact that ordinance changes. So irrespective of what kind of ordinance we're talking about, if something were to change, it wouldn't apply to those that are existing as long as they're in that conforming use. But, if a change is made, irrespective of the type of business we're talking about or type of zoning we're talking about, it would apply to those that came after the fact. So it's not just specific as to this particular use. I mean, that type of change in an ordinance of any type would, be applicable only to those coming after the fact.
So I saw a baseball player the other day put a little white pouch in his mouth, and he got fined or whatever because it's a new form. It's not a vape. It's a different form of nicotine, I guess. I don't know what it's called, Sims or something like that. But I'm just wondering, when the next new vaping product comes along, do we have to do another ordinance to do that? My understanding is these shops like Kratom and all that kind of stuff, they change. Like, they just come up with an alteration of the original formula.
But the attempt was to try to enhance our definition enough to cover something along those lines. Now, technology is such that something could be developed in the future, and we may have to address it at that point. But, the attempt was, at least of what we knew of these types of products, to try to define it in such a way that we cover every aspect that we can. Nothing's perfect, and like I said, technology is advancing all the time, so it may be possible, or maybe it's probably probable, that in the future we'll have to come back and tweak the definition or something along those lines, but, we'll just have to handle that when we get there.
So the mythical HEB that we've always been hoping for, if they come into town, that's a big store. Will they get to sell vapes? Because Kroger gets to sell vapes.
Sure, they don't fall in that definition. So any convenience store, department store, grocery store is specifically excluded in the definition.
So they have a different set of rules than these new rules?
Right, because those sales and those stores are ancillary, they're minimal. That's not their primary focus of sales.
And is there a threshold for primary sales then?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, somebody may come in and say, how many pizzas do I have to sell before I can sell my vapes?
Jerry, the only parallel I can think of is a 51% rule on a bar versus a restaurant. I mean, I don't know if that then constitutes a majority.
It's not defined. I mean, you're using the common usage of what it means to be an ancillary sale at that point, but you're also looking at, the tax code and those kind of things to kind of give us guidance on that and how courts have interpreted that. But, it may come down to a case-by-case basis And, you know, the facts are gonna be different for every location you're talking about. So it may put it over an ancillary sale based on the facts of that, and then they would fall into that definition, whether they consider themselves a convenience store or not. But, you know, that, again, we'll have to evaluate that on a case-by-case basis at that point.
So there are examples as you drive for a tour where you can get your kratom, your baked potato, and your cell phone repaired all in the same address, which is, I'm just saying. So we'll probably have some that actually.
We'll question that.
It would be, yeah. Not the big question is that where you want to get your baked potato?
Well, I think if you were vaping, you might ask the same question about a potato, or whatever. I'm just curious, we created this workshop, the workshop, I didn't mean to bring this up now, but I might as well. I mean, we created these two workshops, and I have direct quotes, largely unsuccessful, and trying to hash out all these issues by these, and largely unsuccessful was what those workshops were called. So doesn't it seem like if you ask questions that we created a committee to work this stuff out. Doesn't it seem reasonable, we've had no meetings, doesn't it seem reasonable that this should go to committee to be hashed out? Like how much code, how much 51%? I'm just asking. I mean, why did you create a committee if you are just gonna go ahead and push these forward?
I think I can answer that.
Sure.
And I was at both of those meetings, and you were too.
Yeah.
Is that we knew we were getting nowhere, so we decided collectively, what can we agree on? You know, and I think it was a consensus that we can agree on these 1, 2, 3, 4 items to go to public hearing, and then after that, go to committee, because there wasn't a consensus on the rest of the stuff. After these got approved, or whatever we decide to do on these, then the committee kicks in, which is you asked to be on it, and Blaine asked to be a part of it, okay? And then you work with whoever, bring it back to the council. But this was totally because we were under the impression, and everybody agreed that we thought we were sure we could agree on a consensus on these 4 items.
And that's exactly what I wanted to hear, because I felt there wasn't enough transparency. Because if I was sitting out there and you said, we are creating a committee to fix all this, however, we're gonna fix some of it tonight. If I was sitting out in the audience like I used to do, I'd be like, well, that seems weird. You created a committee, but you're not using a committee. So I appreciate your transparency. You stepped right into my trap, and I appreciate it.
Well, then let me just
Step
answer your
again.
trap. Okay. I haven't heard one word from the audience on anything that we've done tonight.
Do you want me to go out there?
No, you're right here.
Okay.
You're right here. I haven't heard one word from the audience. Yeah.
Oh.
Any other questions, council?
I just wanted to say, we really haven't thanked you for being here, Mr. New, and I really appreciate your hard work. And I know everybody else does. I'm just gonna be the one to say it first. It's really, we're really grateful that you're here.
I appreciate that, and I will engage the subcommittee. I will be part of that group and help kind of facilitate that discussion and bring things back to the council. So I will participate in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm good with with this item E. I think
We
there's
need to open the
gonna
public
be-
hearing first.
Let me open
Oh, sorry.
the meeting, Kathleen. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Okay, anybody from the audience have anything to say? Go ahead.
Jump the gun.
A little bit. It's over here.
I'm Dave Schaefer. I'm one of the owners of the Nacogdoches Cigar Company down here on Main Street. And I do agree with the commission that this proliferation of vape shops and smoke shops is kind of getting out of hand. It does target the younger, and appreciate the fact that you would grandfather some of the older businesses in, but let you know, Nacogdoches Cigar Company is really trying to be part of the community. We don't cater towards the younger crowd, or any of that. So, vapes, that's a whole nother ballgame, but I understand how you have to put all this in one ball. So just kind of consider where that's coming from.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve item 6E as presented.
And I'll
All in
second.
favor? We have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 6F, public hearing. Consider amending the Code of Ordinances for the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, Chapter 118 zoning, Article 2 administration, Division 4 amendment procedure to allow for the exchange of designation of the controlling board for protest of zoning changes. Mike.
Mayor and Council, Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. This one, similar to the previous two public hearing items, is a continuation of Council's discussion with P&Z at the workshop on August 22nd, 2024. The focus here was, can we address any potential conflicts with Texas Local Government Code within our ordinances and amend our codes to align better with the state code. This was one we would consider housekeeping. It's a minor change, but an important one where the definition or the term of governing body in reference to protests of zoning changes is the council. Council is the governing body for zoning changes. Commission might have been a prior reference to the governing body, but is not the current reference and could be confused with Planning and Zoning Commission. So we wanted to eliminate that confusion, very specifically identify the council as the governing body within this ordinance change. And that is section 118, 141B. Just that change. That is this ordinance amendment. I'm open for any questions.
Any questions to Mike?
Yes, so this is not, so it's G that has the terminology of the city planner versus.
G is the appeals to Board of Adjustment. That specifies city planner in the proposed, yes.
So this just changes the wording for the city council.
Yes, ma'am, different section.
Thanks, just wanted to clarify.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, we'll open the public hearing and ask for any public comment. There being none, we'll close the public hearing and have council discussion or a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the item 6F, amending the Code of Ordinance for the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, Chapter 118.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
All against, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is public hearing. Consider amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, Chapter 118 zoning, Article 2 administration, Division 3 Board of Adjustment to amend the number of days to file an appeal to the Board of Adjustment and who may appeal Board of Adjustment decisions. Mike.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. Item 6G on the agenda is similar to the previous three public hearings where staff is proposing amendments to an ordinance, specifically Chapter 118, the zoning ordinance, to align better with Texas Local Government Code. This is a little more involved than the previous item where there were specific additions represented within the code that had changed in September of 2019. Prior to that time, and I'll get into that in just a minute in the presentation, our code did align with Texas Local Government Code. After September 2019, we fell out of alignment based on changes that were effective at that time. So what are we doing? We're updating or we're proposing amendments to appeals to city planner decisions, Planner specifically is one I'll touch on in a moment. Only certain persons may appeal. Only certain people are allowed to appeal under Texas Local Government Code. We'll touch on that as well. Appeals must be filed no later than 20 days from the date of the decision. Hearings must be conducted no later than 60 days from the filing. Now, what are we talking about as far as local government code? Prior to 2019, appeals to the board in section 211.010 said that any of the following persons may apply: a person aggrieved by the decision or any officer, department, board, or bureau of the municipality, and that appeals must be filed within a reasonable time. It did not designate a certain number of days, it just said reasonable time. That does coincide with our existing code. In September of 2019, the Texas legislature passed House Bill 2497, identifying a number of additions to expand on the definition of persons who are eligible to file an appeal, persons aggrieved, any officer, if those decisions are not specific to a property, project, or address, and if it is specific to a property, project, or address, those persons must be within a certain, must be related to the application or within a certain distance, in this case 200 feet of the property of the subject decision. Again, it does specify later on in Part 2 of 211.010, the appeal must be filed not later than the 20th day that is reflected in our proposed amendment. And the 60 days was already reflected within the code. That did not change, but we have updated our proposed amendment to include that, which is consistent with the current code. One local, I would say local, one specific change specific to our code is changing Section 118 of our zoning ordinance, Part 100, to address appeals of decisions by the city planner as opposed to city officers in general. And we try to be consistent in referencing the city planner decisions, administrative decisions, on down in the rest of the ordinance where appeals are referenced for Board of Adjustment. Again, the changes you see within these slides, other than that city planner specifically identified, just addressed to align with current local government code. And I'll welcome any questions after the public hearing.
So why didn't you keep the Texas Local Government Code language that talks about administrative officials as opposed to specifically the city planner?
I'll let maybe Jerry extend on this. I think the intent was to identify for the Zoning Board of Adjustment to stay within the confines of the zoning ordinance. City planner decisions really don't extend beyond the zoning ordinance in terms of zoning or administrative decisions related to zoning. We're trying to be consistent with those and put some parameters around what might be appealed, because it does affect development and applications and property owners' intent.
So I'll step in and address that question in particular. Essentially, it was try to be consistent with what we already have in the current zoning ordinance. I would just refer you to this previous section, which sets forth what the BOA can do. And one of those, the first thing is decide appeals of the city planner's decisions. And it only references the city planner. And then if you go to section 100, the title, so essentially what the changes were made were the changes to titles. That's it. There was nothing in the actual substance of the ordinance that was being changed. So if you look in subsection A, it only speaks to a decision of the city planner, and then subsection B, an appeal from the action of the city planner. So essentially, the attempt was to correct the titles in those subsections to mirror what the language in that part of the ordinance already says. That was the only change to be made.
So, was this specifically discussed at that earlier meeting and agreed upon by all of us in those two meetings? That it's the decision of the city planner, not city offices or city administrators or anything else that's in the Texas Local Government Code. This was never discussed either one of those meetings?
I don't think it was. I don't remember it. The only thing that I know that was discussed was
20 days?
the 20 days that you said that you would go to jail over, you know.
No, I said
And that's the only thing that I remember. So, no, it wasn't discussed then. No, not at all.
No, not specifically.
And
We did address, I guess, generally talking about just kind of cleaning up some stuff in these ordinances. And this was part of
That's
that.
not cleaning up, though, that's changing. I think that's hardly housekeeping.
But
It's a substantive change if there are other decisions made related to zoning. I think we talked about that may be made by other city administrative officials.
Well, the only thing I'll add is purview of a zoning board of adjustment would not include building permits. So that'd be one area where you have a building official, or what the fire marshal would do. So I would not think a zoning board of adjustment would get into those, because actually at that point, I think they would be beyond their original intent by definition of what they are, zoning board of adjustment.
That, I think, needs a further discussion, because if the zone change happens and then later on, the city administrative officials decide something does not even need to go for a variance to the zoning board of appeals, the only place that a decision's made is in the permit. I know this really well.
Well, I'm saying their purview should be limited to zoning, though, in terms of if there was another process, if something was issued in error, let's take another scenario. There have been errors on the part, all over the place, by different divisions, let's say building official. I wouldn't think the building official scenario would be something, it would be highly irregular in most cases to have the zoning board dealing with anything with the building official. That would usually be something that might make its way back up to council, but
Well,
zoning specifically, no.
let me just, the Texas Local Government Code refers to administrative official. In the planning and zoning meeting, I think the staff was very particularly asked, does this mimic Texas Local Government Code? And the response was yes. And in this instance, it does not mimic Texas Local Government Code language. And you have a wonderful committee that's been appointed, and I'm totally happy with the people who will be on it. And I think this particular thing is a substantive change and really needs a lot further discussion, because we do not want to limit appeals that can be made based on, a city planner might do it right now, but next week we might have the decision made by I never can get your title straight, but you might make a decision that somebody might want to appeal. So I would like this fleshed out a lot further in the committee, just that part. It's never been discussed before. It's a change from Texas Local Government Code. It could have a very substantial effect. I'm happy to, however you want me to do it, I'm happy to vote on the 20 days, as much as I hate the 20-day limit, but I'm happy to agree to that. But this is a substantial.
I'm just saying, however y'all flesh that out. For example, I've never seen the city engineers, a decision as a city engineer, go back to a zoning board of adjustment under that scenario.
But at that meeting, we were assured that what we were working on were not changes to things. We were working on housekeeping, cleaning up terms, making consistency, and this is a big change. I think it needs to go to the committee that you appointed to be hashed out, because we haven't discussed this. It wasn't discussed in that meeting. It was just kind of put in amongst the 20 days. You're breaking the law, can't be breaking the law, but this is not a law. This is a new thing.
Just to be clear, council members, you're the ones that have addressed concerns regarding the proposed amendment. You're focusing narrowly on the changes to
Terminology.
the person that making the decisions, not necessarily defining the person's aggrieved or the 20 days. So those are not concerns that you're wanting to address with your statements. It's really identifying city officials more generally than city planner.
That's my only
Okay.
concern. The 20 days, as much as I hate it, I know we have to do it. And all the rest of the language. Actually, on the section 2, we put in, that's not in accord. That's, again, you put in the language city planner when it's in the code, Texas Government Code, it's administrative official. So I just want to
Well,
get that all.
I guess where my concern would be, after going to the committee, let's take a scenario where the city engineer he decides with the developer, okay, based on our current ordinance, you're gonna have to go from a 12-inch line to a 16-inch line with what you're going to build for there to be adequate fire flow or something. And instead of that going back through, let's say, a process of review and even an appeal back to council, it goes to, if it's administration, I would just be concerned, as y'all look at it, that everything stays within really the purview of each body and their legal intent. So if you had the fire marshal, now, God forbid you do something with the fire marshal, because that's a whole different issue. But the fire marshal, maybe the city attorney, I could see other things creeping in depending, that are outside their purview. So I would just be mindful of that, where it would not be normal in most situations to have it go to ZBA. Many of those same things might come back up to council after having administrative review back up, let's say either city attorney or myself, and then pass back up and then discussed at council.
But I think we'd be more than open to discussing all that. I just wish we could do it in the committee that was created that hasn't met yet. That's all I'm asking for. You created a committee, let us meet, and we'll have this discussion. The very fact that people are asking questions means they didn't understand this issue.
And I know I forget a lot, and I may have been out. I don't know if that's when I was out with COVID.
You had COVID.
Yeah, so you,
So it's a really
so
long.
everything we say is right and you don't know.
Yeah, so that,
It was not our best meeting, so you were very fortunate. But let me just ask this. Say, let me throw this scenario out, but I really do think it really needs that part, just that part. Let's say you all get together. I mean, I asked this question before. That didn't surprise anybody. We had a nice long visit about it. But say you decide that really this property, some people might say it needs to go to ZBA because it's a non-conforming lot, but really you all decide it's conforming and it doesn't need to go to ZBA. But all of the neighbors say it is a non-conforming lot. We're challenging your decision, Mr. New, even though we know you're brilliant, wonderful, but we're challenging your decision. And we think it needs to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustments. It's really appropriate for the Zoning Board of Adjustments to then hear that challenge and say, yes, it does need to come back and get a variance. Because you make so many decisions, and I know you all are very wonderful, but every once in a while there's a mistake made, and just by the very chance that somebody catches it within the 20 days that they have, including weekends and everything, they should be able to appeal it. People need the right to appeal. They have the right.
Sure, and so if council's supportive of the other
That's correct.
proposed amendments,
am.
with the exception of references to city planner, that can be part of the action.
Well, let me ask you something. Okay, you're marking out city official, right? And you're putting the word planner in, right? Okay, which goes right back to what Rick just said. It needs to stay in the purview of where it's at. So who is the city official then that would be the city official?
That's new for one, or it could be, you could change.
I
who
mean, that's
actually
why
does
they
this. Anyway.
cleaned this up, is to put it in where it's supposed to go instead of just a broadband city official. Who's the city official?
Well, currently, it states the city planner is in the ordinance, and that's and that's all I'm trying, whether we decide that tonight or at another time, the intent was, when that mark out was made and planner was added beside it, was to correspond with what the text was of the ordinance. And the ordinance states that it's affected by a decision of the city planner. It doesn't mention any other officer or official or anybody else in the city. When you look through the ordinance as it's currently written, and I don't know, it was written in 1998, when they currently wrote it, that exists right now, it says the decision of the city planner. So that was the intent. Now, whether you go forward with that or not tonight, that's your decision. But that was the intent of, making those changes to the titles in those parts of the.
Okay, but not to debate an attorney, so, but the whole title is change appeal of decisions made by city officers.
Right,
So you changed that to planner.
Again, yeah, changing the title to reflect what's in the actual
Ordinance.
text of the
Well,
ordinance.
and anyway, I'm just suggesting this go to committee, but that is my only concern, and I'm happy to go with the others. I'm not happy to go in 20 days, but.
I do think.
You don't have a choice on that, Kathleen.
Your concerns are reflective.
You don't
of-
have a choice on that. You gotta go to jail.
It's
you know.
reflective of other things brought up, and even tonight, in other items where you want to make sure the city's consistent. I think that's our goal.
Yeah, and if we've been doing this since 1998, how much is it going to hurt just to let the committee meet and talk about this subject? I mean, how much, we're not breaking the law, we're just changing some words, so how much damage can we do if we put it off a month?
This wouldn't necessarily, concerns about planner versus officer versus official isn't necessarily as extreme as the 20 days, because 20 days is called out by the state code, and that's very
Right.
specific.
So I'm happy to make a motion that does not include,
First, we need to have the.
oh, yeah, right, but
Public hearing.
I'm just curious how to do this. That's really what I'm asking about.
We'll pick that up after the public
Okay,
hearing.
thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? We'll go to the open public hearing. Any questions from the audience? There being none, we'll close the public hearing. Council discussion?
So in reading the text of the ordinance as written, it says that appeals to the Board of Adjustment may be, let me see.
Which section are you reading?
So section A, under 118-100, appeal of a city planner's decision, that's new, correct? The italics?
No, that's current.
That's current, okay. So appeals to the Board of Adjustment may be filed concerning a decision of the city planner. That's what it states currently.
Correct. Well, I'll read the first sentence here from the current code. Appeals to the Board of Adjustment may be taken by any person aggrieved or by any officer, department, or board of the city affected by any decision of the city planner, period.
Thank you. So currently, it's conceivable that you could make an appeal that was not within Chapter 118, correct? Based on that language? That's why you added in the enforcement of this chapter as a red line edit?
Well, that in relation to Section 99, which is not before you, but there's some language in Section 99A that extends beyond this chapter, and it talks about city rules and regulations. And so it was to clarify, kind of to mirror not only 11899-1, but also to clarify what the role of the ZBA is with respect to this chapter. So there was some question, I think, that came out in some previous meetings with the ZBA as to what their scope was of authority. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So the 90 to 20 days, not just that, but what parts do we have to approve to be in compliance with the local government code?
So the change from 90 days to 20 days is one, and the change of who can make the appeal under the local government code was changed. So as Mike pointed out, there's really a two-part test, I guess. If the applicant for the appeal is appealing something that's related to a specific, is it address, application, or I can't remember the exact language.
Application, address, or project.
Or project, then there are certain limitations to who can make that appeal. If it's more of a general decision, then it really is consistent with what the current ordinance and the prior statute said.
So Jerry, it's really, they've narrowed it on who has standing effectively.
And that
Yes,
seems,
correct, that's correct. So, and particularly for those when it's involving a particular address, particular project, they've kind of narrowed that standing down.
that seems pretty severe to me. I mean, that's a big change.
Huh?
Because if somebody, like, for instance, the other zoning changes we were doing tonight, if somebody that there were, 8 houses that didn't complain, but Blaine said, well, maybe, they're older, they're not into this, they don't understand all of these rules and regulations. But if somebody, 15 feet out of that said, my God, we need to help these people, they suddenly can't appeal this because they're not within that 200 feet boundary. It seems like a huge change. It seems like you're trying to protect yourself rather than protect the citizens.
But the legislature made that change.
Not, they didn't do the change of it, they didn't do that line, they only did the 90 to 20 days.
No, they did both.
No.
They took all of that out?
Yes.
Well,
If you,
I'm
And
wrong.
we did take a snippet of that section. It's at the end of your packet. In that.
Yeah. If you want, it should be in your packet. the
Well, I
entire-
believe you, I just didn't know that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially mirrored the language when it came to the standing portion as well as the time period. We mirrored the language from the local government code as it was updated in 2019.
So we've been breaking the law since,
well,
I wouldn't say breaking the law.
Since the early 1700s.
yeah.
Sorry.
however, I do want to point out that, as you're talking about the person, which is actually 211.010 appeal to the board, that the Texas local government code again says a decision made by an administrative official, and you change that to city planner also. And you
I'll just
inserted-
have to say, I didn't use the word city planner. That was in the current ordinance as it is.
Well, no, but in this section that the new section put in, it does not mimic the Texas local government code. Correct?
If the reference to city planner was something that council didn't feel like could move forward tonight and wanted to have the subcommittee discuss, staff would sort of prepare that for the subcommittee and identify some context and why that was shared as a concern of council and what moving forward could be proposed or at least reviewed by that committee as changes. Giving specific cases as to what a city planner administrative decision under the zoning regulation would be versus a building official decision, if any, under the zoning regulation. So
That's my question. Who has the authority under Chapter 118 to make a decision that can be appealed? Who has the authority to make a decision? Is it,
remember administrative, because many decisions governed under this regulation go before boards like the planning and zoning, go before council as the governing body. So there's a limited group of decisions, and I don't want to toss any out as softball,
of
but
decisions or
administrative
decision
decisions.
makers?
Administrative decisions.
So those are the decisions, but who would the decision maker be? I think that's what our discussion is. If it's the city planner, if they're the only one that would have decision-making authority, then having city planner there makes sense. There's no one else that can make decisions.
But that's not accurate.
And I do understand that, you're looking at me who has a role in planning development, has a role in development services, under a different title. Someone could really parse words
But let me,
and play with that, but I understand.
let me throw something in there. So in another city where I had an executive director over all of infrastructure, they had the city engineer and the public works director. So they were not the city engineer. They had a PE, actually had an AICP and a PE. However, officially in city code, the city engineer, there were certain things that just the city engineer was the ruling authority. Mike, even when we created this position, to be able to assist across multiple areas, the city planner position, at least from our perspective, still exists as really that official liaison back to ZBA on zoning related, or in many cases, P and Z. So correct me if I'm looking at it wrong, just in terms of trying to at least keep the purview somewhat close instead of, now, in an imperfect world, you'd have multiple people just across different areas saying, okay, well, Mike, you decide this time, next time it'll be one, and then we'll have this case do it next time, and then it just keeps. We're trying to have everything at least follow the Texas Local Government Code, local ordinance, some semblance of relativity to how it relates back to zoning board of adjustment. So typically that's the planner.
And that's what we charged Jerry to do, to help with.
And I don't know, because I'm, that COVID, I still can't remember what y'all talked about. I didn't feel real good that night. I listened, but I didn't feel good.
So I am happy to make a motion if we can pull out that language. I mean, if you can instruct me how to do it, or I can make a motion to not to send the whole thing to the committee, but I'm happy to. I know you're worried about the 20 days, and as much as I'll choke on the words, I can make the motion that we will, for the 20 days and for the other, as long as we don't.
I'll defer to Jerry, but what it sounds like you're asking to do, Councilmember Mayor, if you want to chime in, you can.
Let me just make it real simple. We can go from here. I'll make a motion that we approve.
I think we need to have the public hearing before any motions can be made.
Have we opened it yet?
No.
Okay. All right, we're going to open the public hearing. Any comment from the audience? There being none, we'll close the public hearing. Council discussion. I'll make a motion that we approve, consider amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nacogdoches, Texas, Chapter 118, zoning article, all of G, period. I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, next item. Consider approval of purchase of 65 body-worn cameras and approval of a contract by and between the City Police Department and Motorola Solutions. Chief of Police.
Council, Mayor, Scott Weems, Chief of Police. I hope to make this short and sweet.
Okay.
Good luck.
Like everything else tonight.
Yeah.
So we're here to consider the approval of 65 body-worn cameras and the approval of the contract by and between the Nacogdoches Police Department and Motorola Solutions. And I've invited Blake Galloway, who is with Motorola, to come speak on any questions that you have regarding the contract or the actual cameras and the upgrade. So I'll start it out with the total cost is going to be $379,420, $379,420, and that's over a 5-year period. And we found money from last year's budget and from reimbursements that totaled $150,000. So what was proposed at the beginning was that we would have the first year free and then 4 payments, annual payments of whatever the total is. So when we found the $150,000, we decided to do a down payment like a car, put $150,000 on top for this year, and then that brought down our cost annually. And so what we do now for the maintenance agreement is we pay $50,000 a year annually for the maintenance agreement for the Motorola. The WatchGuard is what it used to be called, the body-worn cameras. and the cameras in the cars, which is by law is what we have to abide by. And so it only brought our total, our additional monies up to $7,355 per year. And we get a 3-year warranty of, well, I'll let Blake talk about that because he's had a long day. He's been here with us for over 2 hours, and I think he deserves a chance to talk. But on the money, if you have any questions, please ask them now on what we've decided to do about the money and the down payment and the payments.
This is budgeted, isn't it, Scott?
This was, the actual $150,000 was diverted over into this year's budget.
Okay.
The extra 7,000, that'll be budgeted next year, starting next year. So we're clean, it's a wash right now.
Perfect.
So if you have any questions on that, please feel free to ask. If you have any questions on the warranty or the camera system, I would prefer Blake answer those. So I'll turn that over to Blake. Blake.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Blake Galloway with Motorola Solutions, Regional Account Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm just here to field any questions you might have on our systems.
I'll jump in. So docking stations.
Yes.
So how will these cameras dock? Will they be like the, what are they, 16 or 12 station? How we?
They'll have 8 base stations at the department, and they'll also have docks inside the cars. And so the body cameras can offload via the car when it pulls into the station, or by coming inside and docking it in one of the multi-bay docks inside the station itself.
And the cameras themselves, do they have onboard storage?
Correct, they do. There's a total of approximately 50 hours of onboard storage on each camera, and the average patrol officer in a 12-hour shift makes approximately 3 to 4 hours worth of video. So our goal is to hold at minimum 10 shifts worth of video from what we average usually see on that camera before it has to be offloaded.
And so once it does offload to evidence library, it's just going to be there, and it will interface with our Wi-Fi at the police station to upload that video footage to the cloud.
Correct. It will use the city internet to offload that footage to the cloud, and once it's there, it will reside inside the Azure Government Cloud per the police department's retention policies. And so once it meets a retention policy deadline, it will then automatically fall off to keep the department within CJIS guidelines for evidence management.
Last question. I know a little bit about this. Is 65 enough for the number of officers we have?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's all I've got.
I'm sorry you had to stay here so long.
Oh, no worries. I enjoy it.
I
Thank you very much.
was trying to give you some questions that you could answer so you could justify your being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is not a public hearing. Okay, so we can come.
Can I add something?
Yes.
The server that we converted over was gonna cost us $75,000. That's what we diverted the money into the 150. And we are going to convert that server over into another usage. And so we've actually saved $75,000 on top of everything for the city. So I thought I'd throw that in.
Yay.
Yeah.
We've had.
And Motorola's cloud solution is
Right.
rock solid.
And we're going to cloud-based instead of on-prem, and so that's better for Dennis and the man hours he would have to put in.
He's out there nodding.
Well, he can come up here if he wants to. If
Any
you
other
have
questions?
for it. He's willing.
I will make a motion that we approve the purchase of 65 body-worn cameras and approve the contract by and between the City of Nacogdoches Police Department and Motorola Solutions.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our regular agenda. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, we will adjourn to executive session.
7:54.
7:55.
Make the motion that we extend the contract of the city manager an additional year, restoring it to its 3-year term, that we extend the housing allowance for an additional year, and that we provide a 3% raise for the city manager.
We have a motion. I'll second. We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. This concludes our meeting. It is 9:20. This meeting, God bless this great city of Nacogdoches, Texas. This meeting is adjourned.